The American desert is the one piece of the natural world you believe cannot hide anything from you. You drive through the Mojave or the Sonoran with the windows up and the air conditioning on, looking out over miles of cracked earth, sagebrush, and shimmering heat waves. You hike a trail in Joshua Tree in a t-shirt and shorts. You step off the pavement to take a photograph, looking out at an ocean of sand and stone that seems entirely empty. The sheer openness of the landscape gives you a profound, completely false sense of security. You think that because there are no dense trees, no murky waters, and no thick fog, you are safe. It is the most visible ground you know. And yet, the emptiness is an illusion. Most lists of dangerous animals send you into deep jungles or dark swamps. This one does not leave the sunlight. We are ranking 11 venomous creatures of the American Southwest by two things at once: how flawlessly they have adapted to blend into a landscape that offers zero cover, and how completely you would fail to notice them until the exact moment they strike. These rankings are weighted by what their venom actually does to the human body, relying on real numbers logged by the CDC and state poison control centers. And here is the shape of it. We start with the creatures that wear bright colors as a warning you will probably ignore. We move into the animals that bury themselves alive in the very dirt you walk on. And we end with something you cannot see from the trail, something that has entirely bypassed the wild and has likely already been inside your own home. By the time we reach number 1, the idea of checking your boots in the morning is going to stop being a piece of quaint advice and start being a survival instinct. If you live in these dry states, or if you ever plan on traveling through them, go ahead and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and it helps the channel. And tell me one thing: where in the world are you watching from? And what is the closest call you have ever had out in the dry country? Drop it in the comments. I read them. Now, the countdown. Number 11. The Texas red-headed centipede. When you picture the venomous predators of the Chihuahuan desert or the scrublands of the Texas panhandle, you usually picture something with scales. You do not picture an 8-inch-long armored insect that looks like a prehistoric hallucination. The Texas red-headed centipede wears its danger plainly. It has a bright blood-red head, a sleek black body, and dozens of vivid yellow legs. In nature, this kind of high-contrast coloration is called aposematism. It is an evolutionary billboard that says, "Do not touch me." But people look at a centipede and see a mere bug. They assume that because it is an insect, it is a nuisance, not a threat. Here is the reality of the red-headed centipede. It does not just scavenge for dead leaves. It is an active, aggressive predator that hunts lizards, rodents, and even small snakes. It moves with a terrifying, fluid speed over the rocks and sand, and when it strikes, it does not sting with its tail. It uses a pair of modified legs near its head called forcipules, which act like hollow, venom-injecting pincers. When it grabs hold, it bites hard, driving a localized toxin into the flesh that causes immediate, searing pain, swelling, and sometimes systemic nausea. The danger lies in how you encounter them. They cannot survive the baking midday sun, so they seek out dark, damp microclimates. They slide under the cool stones you sit on. They slip into the folds of the tent you pitched in Big Bend. They crawl into the sleeping bag you left unzipped. It does not warn you it is there. It just waits in the dark, and when your hand brushes against it in the night, it reacts with explosive violence. Number 11 goes to the predator that proves a creature does not need a spine to make you regret touching it. Number 10. The Gila monster. There is a myth about the Gila monster that gets people hurt every single year in Arizona and New Mexico. Because it is a heavy, thick-bodied lizard that waddles slowly across the desert floor, people assume it is clumsy. They see its striking pattern of black and orange scales, resembling Native American beadwork, and they think it is an oversized, sluggish relic that could never catch a human being. They get close, they try to take a photo, they try to poke it with a stick. What they do not realize is that the Gila monster spends up to 90% of its life deep underground in burrows, avoiding the heat. If you see one on the surface, you are already intruding on its very narrow window of active hunting. And while it may walk slowly, it strikes with lightning speed. It can whip its head around in a fraction of a second, but the real nightmare is its bite. Unlike a viper, which uses hollow fangs like hypodermic needles to inject venom instantly, the Gila monster has grooved teeth. Its venom glands are located in its lower jaw. When it bites, It clamps down with the crushing force of a vice, and it begins to chew. It aggressively grinds its jaws into your flesh, manually working a potent neurotoxic venom deep into the wound. The pain is described by victims as feeling like hot lava flowing through their veins. The lizard's jaws lock so tightly that people often have to pry the animal's mouth open with a tool or submerge it in water just to get it to release. It has been out here the whole time, moving slowly, surviving silently. Number 10 is the reminder that in the desert, slow does not mean safe. Number 9. The Western Diamondback Rattlesnake. You already know this name. It is the icon of the American Southwest, stretching from the scrub of Texas across the Sonoran and deep into California. An adult can easily reach 5 feet in length and weigh over 10 pounds. It is heavy, it is muscular, and it is responsible for the vast majority of snake bites in the United States. But everyone assumes they know the rules of engagement. The rule is that the snake will rattle. The rule is that it will give you a fair warning, a loud, buzzing alarm that tells you to step back. But the animals never signed that agreement, and lately, the rules are changing. In heavily trafficked areas, from the trails of Camelback Mountain to the outskirts of San Antonio, people are reporting a disturbing trend. Diamondbacks are rattling less. Rattling draws attention, and for a snake, drawing the attention of humans or coyotes often means death. So they rely on their primary defense, absolute invisibility. Their scales perfectly mimic the dappled shadows, the dry brush, and the crushed granite of the desert floor. You can stand 3 feet away from a coiled diamondback and look right at it without your brain registering its presence. It does not rattle. It does not flee. It trusts its camouflage completely. It sits in a tight coil, waiting for a pack rat or a rabbit. When you accidentally step off the trail to let someone pass and your boot comes down on its territory, the snake does not hesitate. It can strike at a speed of roughly 10 feet per second. By the time your brain processes the blur of motion, the hemotoxic venom is already destroying the tissue in your leg. It was there before you ever noticed. Number 9 goes to the legend that is slowly learning to keep its mouth shut. Number 8. The Cow Killer. We step down in size, but we climb sharply in localized agony. If you are walking through the dry, sandy patches of the Chihuahuan Desert, or even the dry fields of the southern plains, you might look down and see a vividly colored, fuzzy insect scurrying frantically across the dirt. It looks almost like a brightly colored piece of velvet. It looks entirely defenseless. It is commonly called a velvet ant, but it is not an ant. It is a wingless wasp. The females lack wings and spend their days running across the hot ground, searching for the underground burrows of other wasps and bees to lay their eggs. Because they are out in the open, highly visible to predators, evolution has armed them with one of the most agonizing defensive weapons on the continent. If you step on it with a thin shoe, or worse, if a child bends down to pick up the pretty fuzzy bug, it deploys a stinger that is nearly half the length of its entire abdomen. The venom does not carry the lethal neurotoxins of a snake, but it carries a payload designed specifically to overload pain receptors in mammals. On the Schmidt Sting Pain Index, it scores a brutal 3 out of 4. The pain is so instantaneous, radiating, and intense that it earned the creature its nickname, the Cow Killer. It cannot actually kill a cow, but the sheer, blinding shock of the sting makes you believe it could. Number 8 is the desert's most beautiful and painful deception. Number 7. The desert recluse. When people worry about venomous spiders, they usually think of the dark woods of the Midwest or the humid barns of the South, places where the infamous brown recluse hides. The residents of the arid Southwest look at their dry, sun-baked environments and tell themselves they are safe from necrotic venom. They believe the desert is too harsh for such things. What most people do not know is that the desert has its own version, Loxosceles deserta, the desert recluse. It looks almost identical to its Midwestern cousin, complete with the dark violin shape on its back, but it has adapted to the extreme aridity of the Mojave and Sonoran deserts. It does not build elaborate webs out in the open. It hides in the darkest, tightest, driest crevices it can find. Out in the wild, that means under dead cacti or inside pack rat nests. But the desert recluse has found a much better habitat: your storage shed, your garage, The inside of the gardening gloves you left on the patio table in Tucson. You do not hear it. You do not see it. And the worst part is, when it bites you, you usually do not even feel it. The bite is often painless at first. You put on your glove, you feel a tiny scratch, and you think nothing of it. But the venom contains an enzyme called sphingomyelinase D. Over the next few hours, the bite site turns red, then purple, then black, as the venom begins to literally dissolve your cell membranes. The tissue dies, creating a necrotic ulcer that can take months to heal and leave a permanent crater in your skin. She has been in these dry hills the whole time. You just never had a reason to look deep enough into the shadows. Number 7 is the destruction you never feel coming. We are at the halfway point, and if you are still with me, you are clearly someone who actually wants to know what is out there. You are not satisfied with the postcard version of the desert. You want the reality of it. So this is the perfect moment to subscribe, because the animals from here up are the ones people flat out refuse to believe are real, or whose true capabilities they desperately underestimate. Let's return to the sand. Number 6, the sidewinder. The deeper you go into the Mojave, the hotter the ground becomes. In the middle of the day, the surface temperature of the sand can exceed 140 degrees. Most animals perish out here, but the sidewinder thrives. It is a small rattlesnake, distinct for the 2 raised scales above its eyes that look like devil horns. It moves in a strange, sideways looping motion, a brilliant adaptation that keeps most of its body off the burning sand as it travels. But its movement is not what makes it terrifying. It is how it stops. When a sidewinder decides to hunt, it does not hide under a bush. It hides in the earth itself. Using a technique called cratering, the snake wiggles its body side to side, sinking down into the loose sand until it is completely submerged. Only the crown of its head and its eyes remain exposed. The horns act as sunshades and keep the sand out of its vision. When you are walking across the dunes of Death Valley or the sandy washes of Southern California, you are watching where you step, but your eyes are looking for a snake on top of the ground. The sidewinder has erased the very concept of a shape. The ground looks entirely flat and undisturbed. You step down, believing you are placing your foot on solid sand, only to find the earth beneath you is alive, coiled, and armed with a potent hemotoxin. It does not warn you because it knows you cannot see it. Number 6 is the predator that became the landscape itself. Number 5, the western black widow. If the sidewinder is the master of the open dune, the western black widow is the queen of the urban desert. People who move to the sprawling subdivisions of Las Vegas, Phoenix, or Albuquerque often think they have paved over the wild. They think the concrete and stucco keep the desert out. But the western black widow, Latrodectus hesperus, did not retreat when the houses were built. It multiplied. It loves the very things we bring to the desert: water meters, irrigation boxes, cinder block walls, and the dark undersides of plastic patio furniture. The denial here is profound. We see a spider web and we assume it is just a harmless house spider. But a widow's web is distinct. It is not a neat geometric wheel. It is a chaotic, messy, incredibly strong tangle of silk in a dark corner. And hanging upside down within it is a glossy black arachnid with a red hourglass on its abdomen. The black widow does not want to bite you. It is shy. But when you reach your hand blindly into the water meter box to turn off a valve, or when you grab the underside of a lawn chair to pull it across the patio, you press your bare skin directly against her or her egg sac. The fangs are tiny, and the bite feels like a brief pinprick. But the venom is a latrotoxin, a highly potent neurotoxin. Within an hour, the toxin travels through your lymphatic system. The muscles in your abdomen cramp into a rigid board. The pain radiates through your back and thighs, accompanied by sweating and a suffocating tightness in your chest. Not the one you fear, but the one you should. Number 5 is the venom that lives comfortably in your own backyard. Now the animals begin to genuinely surprise people, because from here, the list stops being just about what hides in the dirt and starts being about things whose presence in the desert feels almost like an error in the code of nature. Number 4, Africanized honeybees. When you are out exploring the deep canyons and rocky outcrops of the Sonoran Desert, you are naturally looking down for snakes and checking your boots for scorpions. You are not looking up. You do not think to fear a bee. But in the 1990s, A hybrid species of bee crossed the border into the American Southwest, and they found the desert climate perfectly to their liking. Africanized honeybees look exactly like regular European honeybees. You cannot tell them apart by sight. The difference is entirely in their psychology, and it is a difference that kills people. A normal honeybee hive might tolerate you walking within 10 or 15 feet of it. If you get too close, a few guard bees might sting you, and once you run away, they will let you go. Africanized bees operate on a completely different threshold of violence. Their alarm zone is massive. The simple vibration of your hiking boots or the hum of a mountain bike from 50 feet away can be enough to trigger them. Once triggered, they do not send a few guards. They send thousands. And when one bee stings, it releases an alarm pheromone that smells faintly of bananas, marking you as a target for the rest of the hive. They aim specifically for the dark areas of your body, your eyes, your mouth, your nose. They target your breath. And they will not let you run. They have been known to chase a human being for over a quarter of a mile. You can run, you can hide in a vehicle, you can jump into a river, and they will wait hovering above the surface for you to come up for air. You were looking at the ground without knowing what was building its forces in the rocks above. Number 4 is the invisible tripwire of the canyon. Number 3, the Sonoran coral snake. This is the geographical paradox. A Western legend living quietly in dry, dusty woods and desert scrub. When people think of coral snakes, they think of the humid swamps of Florida or the deep pine forests of the Southeast. They do not think of the arid stretches of southern Arizona and New Mexico. The Sonoran coral snake is small, often less than 2 feet long and scarcely thicker than a pencil. It is banded in brilliant red, yellow, and black. Red touches yellow, kills a fellow. The phrase is known everywhere, but the denial here takes a strange form. People in the Southwest who happen to spot one often believe the myth that coral snakes are rear-fanged and have mouths so small they cannot possibly bite a human unless you let them chew on the webbing of your fingers. That is a fatal underestimation. Their fangs are indeed fixed and small, but their jaws are highly mobile. If you are gardening barefoot, or if you reach into a pile of brush and startle one, it can easily break the skin on a finger, a toe, or a fold of skin. And it carries a venom that is pound for pound one of the most toxic on the continent. It is a powerful neurotoxin that does not destroy tissue, but instead blocks the transmission of nerve signals to your muscles. The bite site might not even swell. You might think you are fine until your eyelids grow heavy, your speech slurs, and the muscles that control your diaphragm slowly stop receiving the signal to pull air into your lungs. Brought back from the edge of obscurity, thriving where you least expect it. Number 3 is the beautiful thread of death you were sure belonged somewhere else. And that leaves just 2. Number 2 is an anomaly of evolution that broke the rules of snake venom entirely. And number 1 is the thing I warned you about at the very start. The one you might have already carried home. Number 2, the Mojave green rattlesnake. Out in the high desert scrub of the Mojave, blending flawlessly with the pale sage, the creosote bushes, and the sun-bleached rocks, lives a snake that looks incredibly similar to a standard western diamondback. It has the same diamond pattern, the same rattle, and the same heavy build. But it carries a subtle greenish hue, and beneath those pale scales, it carries a chemical payload that defies everything medical science thought it knew about rattlesnakes. For a long time, the rule was simple. Rattlesnakes inject hemotoxic venom. It breaks down blood cells, destroys tissue, and causes massive swelling and internal bleeding. It is gruesome, but doctors know how to treat it. But the Mojave green rattlesnake evolved something else. Through a strange twist of biology, it developed what is known as Mojave toxin, a highly lethal presynaptic neurotoxin. When a Mojave green bites you, you do not just get the tissue destruction of a regular viper. You get a venom that attacks your central nervous system simultaneously. The bite site might not show the catastrophic swelling you expect, which leads victims into a terrifying denial. They think it was a dry bite. They think they got lucky. Then the neurotoxin hits the brainstem. Vision blurs. Swallowing becomes difficult. The respiratory system begins to shut down. The lethality of the Mojave green is statistically staggering compared to its cousins, and treating it requires massive, specific doses of antivenin. It does not just survive the harshness of the high desert, it mastered it, rewriting the chemical warfare of its entire species. Number 2 is the snake that broke the rules of the wild. Number 1, the Arizona bark scorpion. We close the loop. We leave the open desert. We leave the canyons and the dunes. Because the most dangerous venomous creature in the American Southwest does not require you to go hiking to find it. It finds you. When you picture a scorpion, you picture a large, black, heavy-clawed creature crawling across the sand. Those are the desert hairy scorpions, and while they look terrifying, their sting is mild. The Arizona bark scorpion, Centauroides sculpturatus, is different. It is small, rarely exceeding 2 or 3 inches. It is translucent, a pale yellowish brown that renders it virtually invisible against the sand, the gravel, and the wood of your home. And unlike almost every other scorpion in the desert, the bark scorpion loves to climb. It does not stay on the ground. It climbs the stucco walls of your house. It slips through the microscopic cracks in your weather stripping. It climbs up the legs of your bed frame. It demonstrates negative phototaxis, meaning it aggressively seeks the dark, and positive thigmotaxis, meaning it likes the feeling of being squeezed on all sides. So it crawls into your hiking boot left by the door. It slips into the folds of the towel draped over the bathroom chair. It climbs the ceiling of the bedroom, loses its grip in the night, and falls silently onto the blankets. The Arizona bark scorpion is the only scorpion in North America whose venom is considered truly life-threatening to vulnerable humans, particularly young children and the elderly. When you slide your foot into that boot or roll over in your sleep, it stings. The venom is a vicious neurotoxin that causes extreme electrical misfiring in your nervous system. The pain is described as electric shocks pulsing through the limb. Victims experience numbness, frothing at the mouth, uncontrollable muscle twitching, and roving eye movements. You do not see it in the desert because it has long since moved into the places you consider yours. The one at number 1 is the phantom you may have carried home on your own body without ever feeling it. Number 1 is the true king of the Southwest. There is a stillness to the American desert that makes you let your guard down. You look out over the miles of cracked earth and sagebrush, and you feel a sense of peace. You think that because you can see the horizon, you can see the threats. But that stillness is not empty. It is just perfectly, flawlessly quiet. The centipede under the rock, the viper buried in the sand, the spider inside your glove, the scorpion falling from the ceiling. These dry lands were never really tame. They just let you believe they were. The danger of the desert is not that it is harsh, but that it looks so clean, so visible, so conquered by our roads and houses. But the wild never left. It just learned to blend in with the shadows we cast. You were never alone out here. You just thought you were. If this changed the way you will walk into these dry winds, subscribe and stay for the next one. And the next time it feels too quiet out there on the sand, remember why.